FORA.tv. The world is thinking.
Has this made us any safer? You know, as I said, the government and Hillary Clinton and other people said it's made us safer. If it has made us safer, you'd think that it would be getting some terrorists, you know, that some terrorists would be being captured by these methods, by torturing people or by sending them to other countries to be tortured. Well, let me give you some statistics. In the year after September 11th, 5,129 aliens were locked up preventively, many for months. Out of those, how many have been prosecuted and convicted of any terrorist crime? Can anyone you'd think that there would be a substantial amount, you know, 1,000. You know, maybe they made 80% mistakes. Maybe Ali al-Makhtari is one of the 80% of it, but 20% they were right on. 2, you think? 2 or 3. Anybody else want to hazard a guess? 0 is the answer. 0. The next move the government made is they required 80,000 aliens to come down to a special registration program, which was highly invasive and highly threatening. I mean, they didn't lock them up. Out of those 80,000, how many have they prosecuted? Maybe they captured a few that way. 0. 8,000, the FBI went out to get for questioning. They decided these people, and if the FBI comes to your house for questioning, let me tell you, it'll be quite scary to you. Out of those 8,000, how many they got? You know the answer. 0. The September 11th Bipartisan Commission looked at all these preventive measures taken after September 11th, said they were complete failure. They've captured no terrorists. They've alienated many Muslims in our midst, alienated whole communities, and captured nobody. The Bush administration says, but wait a second. We've deported 515 aliens who were subject to terrorism investigations. And we said, well, that sounds pretty impressive. 515 people, would-be terrorists in our midst, you've deported. Well, let me tell you, they only deported them after the FBI, after they were held for months. Many of these people said, just deport me. I want to go home. I've had enough of this country. The FBI held them until they were cleared, and we have a suit on this for holding them for months. And all 515 of these people were cleared of any terrorism, because the FBI said, don't deport them if they're a terrorist, because then they'll just come back. Let's first clear them of any terrorism charge and then deport them. So the 515 people that they've deported are people who had nothing to do with terrorism. They deported them because they had visa violations, they made some error on their visa, they overstayed their visa for routine immigration violations. That's why they deported them. That has nothing to do with terrorism. Well, Bush says, but we've broken up 5 terrorist cells. Now, certainly, this is a great thing. You know, there have been 5 cells in the United States that have been plotting terrorism. They wanted to blow up bridges and bomb buildings, and the government has stopped them and caught them. All right, let me ask you another question. Out of those 5 terrorism cells that they've broken up, how many criminal convictions for attempted terrorism, conspiracy to terrorism? How many? 0. You would think you broke up 5 terrorism cells, we'd see some trials on this. I'll give you one of them, just so you get the flavor of this. The most prominent one was in Lackawanna. And you may have read about this. It was a year or 2 after September 11th. They broke up the terrorist cell. It turned out it was 7 misguided youths who had agreed, the leader of the mosque had said, go to a training camp in Afghanistan with Al-Qaeda. 7 of them went, 4 of them said, we don't have anything to do with this, and left early. The other 3 came home. The FBI put them under surveillance for 1.5 years. They didn't do anything. No attempt at terrorism, no conspiracy. This is the terrorism cell. After 1.5 years, they couldn't get anything on these people, so they prosecuted them, not for attempted terrorism or conspiracy to terrorism or terrorism act, but for material aid to terrorists. And almost all of the terrorist prosecutions nowadays are for material aid, because material aid could mean, as the government has said, there was a famous court case in the Guantanamo case where the judge asked the government, is it material aid to Al-Qaeda if a little old lady in Switzerland gives money to a charity which turns out to be an Al-Qaeda-run charity? And the government said, yes, that's material aid. That would make you an enemy combatant. And that would be material aid to Al-Qaeda. They prosecuted him for material aid. The material aid was they never gave anything to Al-Qaeda. They went to the training camp. And in fact, several US courts have found that use of the material aid statute unconstitutional. But Cheney and Rumsfeld threatened that they would just call them enemy combatants and detain them indefinitely as enemy combatants, and they pled guilty to material aid. It doesn't make me feel much safer that they broke up this terrorism cell. This is not a great example. In any event, that's what they've done. Just one last statistic. When the federal government goes after John Q. Citizen and they prosecute, they get a 92% conviction rate. I would have thought in terrorism prosecutions, the conviction rate would be even higher, because the jury would say this is an evil terrorist. They'd paint the person as, some really evil person. In terrorist prosecutions, the conviction rate is 29%. And the only explanation for this is that, which a number of FBI agents have said, is that they're forcing the Justice Department to prosecute people who they really don't have the evidence about, because of the need to get terrorism convictions. If you balance that record of catching almost no terrorists by this method versus the tremendous harm the war in Iraq has done, the tremendous cost of the war of Iraq, and these other preventive measures, both monetary, in lives, and in the legitimacy and the image of the United States. We, as Rumsfeld once said in an internal memo, are we creating more terrorists than we're putting behind bars? And the answer is unquestionably yes.